evening and welcome to the Tibet Center here at 151 West 30th Street, 3rd floor. We'll begin by reciting the prayer for the spreading of the teaching throughout the length and breadth of the West by RINPOCHE. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallaciously precious gems and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddha's teachings flourish and spread to the expansible areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there, together with their near ones, who have engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like a waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which will source for benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as they hope and wish. Sutra. Thus have I heard once, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, which represents the thrones of all profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas as their natural entities. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, how should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge? And Avalokiteshvara answered, Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas and their natural entities. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form, form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor there without. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of Khensuр, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering to be known as truth, where there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed, Tavyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisattva. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should really profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that Samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, O good Buddha, son of family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you were taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One said this, Shariputra Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One. Regenerate bodhicitta. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So let's recite Lo. We'll do a round of Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 So, today is Darren's birthday.
Thank you.
We are all very dependent on Darren. And though we celebrate birthdays, Chola Rinpoche used to say, why do you celebrate birthdays? You're one moment closer to the end of your life. But we celebrate. So we celebrate all the wonderful things that you've done for us. We all thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren.
And may you live many, 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 many more years,
Yes.
celebrating many, many,
Yes.
many more birthdays.
Long life.
So, long life noodles. Aaron is being given long life noodles. So we reached, and we've been hovering on page 117, and we've reached an interesting point where His Holiness explains the reason for certain emotions that we have been talking about as being afflictive meaning that they harm us. But he explains, and it's something that I've never seen before, he explains the reason for things like anger or attachment or pride, the value that these have, and the way they must have evolved within evolution as things that help protect a species, protect our species. So we begin on 117. From a biological perspective, all our basic emotions evidently have evolutionary purposes. For example, attachment helps bring us together and enables us to create bonds. Anger helps us repel forces that are detrimental to our survival and well-being. Fear enables us to respond to a threat with vigilance. And envy prompts us to compete with others so that we do not overlook our own needs. It's rather interesting. Scientists have demonstrated these basic emotions have clear biological dimensions. When we face an immediate danger, for example, and fear arises, extra blood rushes to our legs, and with increased adrenaline and our hearts beat faster. The emotion of fear literally prepares us to flee. In contrast, when anger arises, more blood goes to our arms, preparing us to confront the threat. So the important point to bear in mind is that these feelings are not destructive in themselves. They become destructive only when their intensity is out of proportion to the situation, or when they arise in situations that do not call for them. So, what do you have to say about the whole idea that these afflictive emotions are not necessarily afflictive? They are not inherently afflictive. How would this apply to attachment, do you think?
Well, because of the afflictive emotions, we create karma, and we're not really encouraged to create karma, are we? I mean, we're not really. The idea is to have no karma, right?
Well, we're trying to cultivate virtuous karma.
And then what do we do with the virtuous karma?
We use it as a vehicle for arriving at a point where we are able to devote it to let's say the dissolution or the of any sense of self, and thereby attain freedom from cyclic existence.
But it's only one component.
Is that
Virtuous.
comfortable enough for you? Yeah.
Virtuous karma alone cannot bring us to attain highest enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, can it?
Sorry?
Virtuous karma alone cannot bring us to attain highest enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings, can it?
I'll let you think about that one.
I've thought about it actually quite a bit.
So I don't think that the idea that we need something in addition to virtuous karma should keep us from cultivating as much virtuous karma as we can.
Okay.
But here what we're
Okay.
talking about is that these emotions which we have up to now been discussing as being afflictive, negative, actually have a natural basis, a basis in evolution, a basis in survival of our particular species.
But is this a good thing?
I'm happy to have survived.
Okay.
Anyone else have something to say on this? We're
I'll
talking
definitely
about
drink water if I'm thirsty. You know, I'm sure.
Good, good, good.
Maybe he's pointing in a direction of having, once we have the response, it's organic, it's physical. There's a lot we can do about responding to emotion as it comes in, I would think.
So as a lot comes, we do a lot of responding. It is important to bear in mind that sometimes, well, you know, it's tricky. Anger, for example, gives us a certain force, a certain vitality to get things done the way they're meant to get done.
Is that the only way?
Where's the firehouse? Do you know?
It's
Is it?
right across the street. The police are across the street.
Yeah, but the fire.
Oh, they call it
It's always close. Yeah.
So the anger has this potential to provide
strength,
the
adrenaline.
yeah.
But somebody makes you angry,
Mm-hmm.
that's very different than you see a raging bull coming at you. It's fear and strength that comes from the fear that the raging bull is coming at you. It's not anger. You're not.
Yeah. So we're not talking about fear. We're talking about the. What I'm asking about are your thoughts on this idea that these emotions that we have been discussing is, we've even gotten to the point of suggesting that there is an inherently negative aspect to these afflictive emotions.
And he's saying no.
And he's saying it's not inherent.
Uh-huh.
They can be negative or afflictive, and they can also serve a purpose. And so getting to know them is an important aspect of mastering them.
But referring to Leslie's question, like, what's that word? Good, you have like virtuous, right?
Yes, yes.
The virtuous bring us like in real life, like it could be bring us wealth, or bring us good health, or bring us peaceful, right? Right?
But you,
No, she's talking to you.
but you're the one with the background.
I'm talking about like
Will it?
without good health, without good wealth, or peaceful. For example, like we want to come to the class if we don't have virtuous. You may not may not be coming here because you need to go to work. You have to feed your families. You don't even, or even you want to willing to come, you don't have good health. You cannot able to come or walk or whatever. Many different difficulties to block you to coming to the class. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
of course,
so,
yes, definitely.
so virtues, if we need that. And especially when we go to like become a Buddha, we have a long way. We don't know like how many bad karmas that we did in our past life, right? You know, so the more virtuous to do, the easier life for you for the next, you know, the coming life or whatever.
Right, but the coming life, but what about this life?
still-
Virtuous
bring
karma, virtuous action does not necessarily bring benefits in this life,
It does.
although we hope
Oh,
so.
it brings you happiness.
Uh-huh.
It brings the other person happiness. That's
It
pretty
might,
good.
not everybody. Not everybody who takes the right
It
path
does for me.
makes the right decisions, ends
For
up
me,
happy.
For me, as an example, before I learned Buddhism, I was always angry. I didn't know myself, and then always like sick, like not healthy. So I always like feel like really I'm not happy, I'm not happy. But after I learn, I totally changed myself. I become more calm, more steady. You know what I mean? Like that means like I know what what my role is. You know what my path is. So I have like more calm, more happier, open-minded. You know, this is the change. It's
So,
benefits.
Here, what we're looking at are these, what we've been talking about as being negative emotions, and we're recognizing that they do have a purpose, and the emotion itself is not inherently negative. It has the potential to be beneficial or helpful to us. So attachment is the feeling that holds families and communities together. We do not usually think of it as destructive. However, when this basic emotion becomes excessive and wants to control its object, it does become destructive. This is true also of desire. In itself, desire is not destructive. After all, without desire, the human race would cease to exist altogether. In fact, desire is the emotion that drives many of our day-to-day activities, from getting up in the morning to eating, working, and pursuing our immediate and long-term goals in life.
There's nothing, according to the teachings of the Buddha, there's nothing that exists inherently, including virtuous actions and non-virtuous actions. So if we start to think, oh, what I'm doing is inherently virtuous, it's eventually going to cause us problems. Or vice versa.
What would be an example of an inherently virtuous action?
I'm saying there is
Can't
no
find
example.
Oh, there is no example.
No, but whether virtue is inherently existent or not,
Uh-huh.
we should engage in virtue,
Yeah.
Because that's the right life, the right path.
because it'll make us happy, it'll make those around us happy. When we're dealing with the more questionable, what would you call them, attitudes or emotions, there, what would be the purpose of scrutinizing whether they are inherently negative or not?
Well, I mean, I think that paragraph shows us that there can be some use to them. They're not inherent.
What is the purpose of scrutinizing whether or not they are inherently?
Because then you have some sense, well, if it's in this context and it's being applied with this intention, this could cause me problems. Whereas if it's in this context, with this other intention, which maybe has some.
What's the purpose of even doing that? You might as well just engage in life, and when your anger gets things done good, and when it hurts someone, that's not so good.
Because then you're prepared in moments to be able to discriminate whether which way you're going.
I might posit, I mean, far be it for me to speculate what the Buddha meant in that, in saying that actions cannot be inherently virtuous or not virtuous, but I might posit that, like for example, let's say like, you sort of give money to homeless people and sort of under the heading of sort of the interconnectedness of all things and the interconnectedness of all of our actions, if you keep giving to homeless people on the street, this is kind of indisputably a virtuous action, right? But if you keep doing it to the point that you run out of money, then you can't anymore. And then suddenly it kind of circles back into surely not becoming the opposite of virtuous, but it sort of undoes itself. Like I'm always I can't not think in terms of Chinese medicine, right? So it's like the mutual interdependence of yin and yang, right? If somebody has a ton of energy, they are considered very young. Oh, this person is very young. They only need like 6 hours of sleep or 6.5 hours of sleep, and then they have so much energy. But if they keep going and they keep creating more quote unquote yang in the body and the central nervous system, eventually they will not be able to sleep. They will have no yin. And if they will not be able to sleep, if then they go, a few months or a few years sleeping only 4 hours a night, then eventually they have no yang because they're not getting enough sleep. They're losing yang, which is to say mitochondria. Then they have no mitochondria. then all of a sudden they are quote unquote yang deficient.
As we get older, we are yang deficient.
We're everything deficient as we get older. Because they are mutually interdependent. So we're losing both. But yeah, speculation.
But I think,
I have a question about the connecting with Mark, the desire, the passage you just read. Isn't it, this is I just read, the high practitioner of Buddhism, maybe in Tantra, who realized the emptiness, maybe not directly on friendship, do they use the desire to practice Father?
Right.
The high practitioner who,
That's what they say.
that's what they say.
What is said?
Is it?
I don't know.
Okay,
Kutsu
my
Tao,
master's
is that right?
master, right, when his life until to 117, and because his son, the Dharma something like the environment is then they send him to see the doctor. They check out his whole organ. It's like the 16 something year included. When he's the 170-year-old, 2 hands can carry over 450 pounds.
Madam.
In terms of virtue, let's take an example of someone who wants, a young person, a young man who wants to be a musician, but his parents have determined that he's going to be a doctor. So, year after year after year, his parents tell him he has to become a doctor, and that's what that's the way it was supposed to be, and he's going to be. So he becomes a doctor. And so as a doctor, he continues to engage in virtuous action, I presume, as a doctor, but that does not necessarily bring him happiness. He has the virtue of being a good and obedient son. But that virtuous action may not bring him peace of mind and happiness and contentment. So I presume then, or I guess that they would benefit in the next lifetime from this virtue.
Well, he probably benefits in that life too. I mean, this is a nice story.
But it's ordinary. It's quite an ordinary example.
Play music on the side and be a doctor and.
No, but this is people have to make these decisions every day because of family pressure to go in the army, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't necessarily that you have virtue for being an obedient child, but that doesn't necessarily bring happiness going in the army.
So I've lost what this is.
Well, I'm saying that I'm questioning whether virtuous action necessarily brings happiness.
No, I think it depends. Virtuous, right? You can be emotion. If your emotion, right, intention, to hand out a quarter to the homeless, right? If in my emotion, my intention is like, for the sake of all the sentient beings, for as in my merit to become a Buddha in the future, I give this one, and then in the future when I success, I will come back to, to help him because of this connection with him. So this quarter will be infinity. This is the virtuous. But on the other hand, you're helping people, but your mind has have a selfish thinking. If in my action I am helping that person, but in my mind I'm thinking, I'm going to help him because I want to take money from him or something. But this action, of course, has a little merit, but it's not virtuous. It depends on your intention. Even if you don't do anything, but if your mind is in a good intention, like Buddha's teaching, that is virtue too.
Yeah, like in her example, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Leslie.
In Leslie's example, it's as it's like the character's intention was to appease the parents, not to help them.
No, appease, follow
Right.
be an obedient child.
So that's why potentially it doesn't equate to happiness. Like it looks on the surface like a virtuous act, but it's not virtuous because they're not doing it to help. They're doing it to appease. They're doing it to avoid displeasure instead of doing it to avoid the person's suffering.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's right. But
then even that line, that can then still be a blurry, there can be a gray area there where it's
Exactly.
complicated.
Yes,
Yeah.
but because people don't necessarily have a choice to do it. A lot of kids have to do what their parents want them to do, and that's it.
Could also question whether pursuing the attachment to music is something that leads to happiness.
Right, there's an assumption in that story that pursuing the dream is the way to be happy, which is not necessarily true.
So to get back to, yeah, we're still waiting for that sitar concert.
But Nicholas, your question about why are we even analyzing these things, kind of, and I was thinking like part of it is part of it that by analyzing these things, it kind of, and then it's that idea that I feel like Tibetan Buddhism, as compared to certain other types of Buddhism, is much more about you study, you analyze, and then you meditate. You don't just some practices where you just meditate and that's it, kind of thing. So it's that idea, and you hear I think Rinpoche and Tree, you said this, where Tibetan teachers say, yeah, you do that study and analyzation, and then, because otherwise you wouldn't, what would you meditate? You wouldn't know how to meditate or what to meditate on. So I think maybe that's part of that answer to me is like you're analyzing that, and then like if you see that it kind of isn't inherently always bad, or these things aren't inherently always anything, then it starts to, you see that it's not, that things are more dissolves a bit, you know. And then you don't have as much, maybe you don't have as much attachment, or you know, it's just, you're just getting insight or knowledge from that awareness, whatever.
And what you just said, I want to say that the process of analyzing, the process of taking these things apart and considering them is a meditation, has an effect on the mind, has an effect on our ability to see anger as having this maybe benefit, but also when we go too far, when it is misused, harming us, harming those around us. So the whole process of analysis, the whole process of discussion actually gives us greater control over these emotions too. Okay. Similarly, even anger is not always destructive. For example, in some situations, strong compassion may give rise to an equally strong sense of outrage, that is, anger, about an injustice. Again, feeling angry can, in the short term, make our minds more focused and give us an extra burst of energy and determination. I would think even as you're a parent. You're a parent too. There are times when you need that force of anger to protect a child.
Every day.
In these ways, anger can, in certain situations, make us more effective in getting things done and obtaining what we rightly seek. However, when anger extends beyond this practical function, most of the energy it brings us is not helpful at all. Since all of us have probably at one time or another been on the receiving end of other people's anger, we all have experience of its unpleasant consequences. Okay. However, while anger may sometimes have a constructive element, hatred never does. Hatred is always destructive. Well, that's... I was not allowed to hate. My father had a rule: we were not allowed to hate. He would say, you can intensely dislike, but you cannot hate. And I remember that it used to so aggravate me that I wasn't allowed to hate. And then I began to appreciate it. I thought, gosh, and it's not that his telling us that we could not hate was the problem. It was that it made me aware of this emotion and made me think about it and made me actually come to the conclusion that hate really is horrible.
You have a very good comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Intensely disliked. That's okay. Okay. Like anger, fear is not destructive in every situation. Fear makes us more attentive and guards us against danger. It also has a powerful motivating factor, forcing us to be cautious and to take care of our well-being. But when fear is obsessive, it can paralyze us and become a very destructive mental condition. Furthermore, excessive fear gives rise to a persistent state of anxiety, which is harmful to our health. I therefore often distinguish between reasonable fear and unreasonable fear. The first kind is not only legitimate, but actually necessary to our survival. If a mad dog comes running up at us, we need to respond to this danger with fear. This is obvious. In contrast, unreasonable fear occurs when the source of the threat is largely our own mental projection. We need to keep this kind of fear in check, for it's totally useless and often destructive. What we need to counter unreasonable fear is a better understanding of what we need to encounter unreasonable fear is a better understanding of the situation at hand. Fear.
What is the example of unreasonable fear? Like, I'm not getting that.
Well, if can someone come up with an example of fear that doesn't have a basis that could?
Maybe PTSD.
Hypochondria. When you are, some people are very worried about their health, and they get all that worry. Is that? Mm-hmm. And
PTSD also.
can you explain PTSD and?
Okay, PTSD is a visceral response to something, to a trauma, like say somebody hit me over the head with a rock. And I knew that person, so that I might, every time I saw that person, I might become fearful. And it's a visceral response. It's organic, and it's not, I don't know how.
It's the same.
Ask him how to explain visceral. How do you explain visceral?
Somatovisceral is it's just the vessels distribute everything throughout everywhere, including the central nervous system, and so and vice versa, and so through that vascular circulation, people will feel somatic responses. They'll feel like the most cliche, of course, like heart palpitation, shortness of breath. Of course, when they see that other person who threw the rock at their head, but maybe the other person was wearing a red shirt, and maybe for the rest of their life they have like PTSD anytime they see a red shirt, which is, that degree of fear is going to cause them a lot of harm.
Thank you.
Because there's a saying in China, right? Once you got bite by a snake, and then next time you see a road on the street, and then you think that it's a snake, and then you get scared. And then all the time like that, something like that.
You have a visceral reaction to the rope.
Well, that makes sense.
Well, it happens.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to make sense.
But there's fear where it's unwarranted, where it's not needed.
But I think we can all antidote that, right? Just like, for example, I stopped on the elevator once, and then the second time when I go in, I do scare. And even now too, I still have that scare. And I have to antidote, antidote for that. It's still there, the fear.
This elevator?
In my home. It's a new elevator. And then I was shaking. Only once, stuck there for a short time. And then,
But I think with fear and with anger, I think for me, I probably tend more to anger, and my wife tends more to fear. But I think where it gets really challenging is in the gray area. I think a good example is coronavirus, right? Like everybody reasonable was quarantined in 2020, right? And then anybody reasonable was no longer quarantined in 2024, and then those few years in the middle, everybody kind of like had their own line of when their mask was going to come off, and somewhere kind of like right in the middle is, you know, all right, there's no right or wrong, but there's like right, right, like the appropriate healthy amount of cautionary fear. And so it still can potentially lead to a great deal of neuroses and decision making. Is like, am I in that sweet spot, whether it's fear or anger or any other reflective emotion, you know?
So here, this is a good example of the importance of our considering it, really thinking about, going through the facts and determining how dangerous it is, whether we should wear a mask or not.
Yeah, for me, where if I'm angry, then I'm like, where is my anger like justified and functional? And where is the point?
But that, to develop the muscle that refrains or restrains us from indulging in the anger when we're not meant to get angry, that's a very tough one to develop.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I found out, right? Sometimes when you are fear, actually it's not only fear, actually it's anger inside. Because when I find out, you know, why am I fear or scared? And then the inside, actually it was the anger inside. Why?
I've heard the opposite said. Like when there's a lot of anger, sometimes it's deep down, there's fear also. I've heard that.
Or
I think it's all
disappointment.
complicated. Our mind is very complex. Yeah.
Anger is usually not a, they say some schools of like, you know, like DBT, if you guys know that and stuff, like, you know, those, they say anger is not a primary emotion or a root, I don't know what the right term is, but it's usually fear, or it can also be, you know, disappointment. So like a good example is a parent being angry at their kid because the kid broke curfew and got home at like 2 a.m. So while they're angry, it's manifesting as anger, but it's because they were super scared that the kid, you know, died in a car crash or whatever. But also disappointment, maybe feelings hurt that the kid didn't listen to them, that kind of thing. But anger is like the expression of these, you know, deeper, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think 99% of my anger, there's always sadness beneath it. But that's not my personality.
Yeah, sadness is well, it's almost like it's almost pushing that sadness away.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah, that's why they're saying that 3 ignorance, right? Anger, anger, hatred, anger, greedy, and ignorance. So it's all these 3 in our mind. It's this 3 roots, right, in our mind. We have to get rid of any of them.
Yes, but we also have to recognize that there can be a benefit in these. And what we're looking at is that there can be a benefit in these emotions. So the dual aspect of emotions, that all of them have destructive and non-destructive sides, can also be seen in other mental states, such as doubt, shame, grief, competitiveness, and even our sense of ego itself. Doubt is the mental factor that enables us to inquire and seek out understanding. Indeed, I always say that a dose of skepticism is quite healthy in that it opens our minds to questioning and new knowledge. However, when doubt becomes pathological, you can explain pathological, it can paralyze us and prevent us from taking any decisive action. So doubt, we are meant to, when we analyze, when we read, when we are studying to bring doubt into the picture, to use our doubt to scrutinize and then come to a conclusion is really important in our tradition. Faith, blind faith, is not considered to be a very beneficial or helpful thing because it's blind. It's not based on anything. It's a leap into the unknown kind of faith. While if you scrutinize and if you establish something to be true, then you can have really intelligent faith in that. And one of the steps by which you reach that intelligent faith is to have a certain amount of doubt to begin with. And in the process of establishing something to be true, if it's a process of removing the doubt, then when you get to the end, you can have really strong, you will have really strong faith in the conclusion. That's the years that we spend debating, the years that we spend applying logic to things, is to remove doubt. But you begin with that doubt. You mustn't repress it, because if you just leap into your acceptance of something without doubt and without removing that doubt, what you have accepted will not have very much solidity.
So I'm start wondering, is that why we have this affliction, and if we can use this affliction well, so that's why this human life is the best, precious human life is the best bet to, because if we can use those, we can think intelligently and we have a tool. I start wondering, and then compare with gods, demigods, the formless realm, they're just happy, they don't have anger. But this is the best realm to be, and I wonder, is using the affliction well.
But it's not using the affliction. The doubt is not afflictive. That kind of doubt is not afflictive. If once we have proven things to be correct, a certain way, if we still go through life with doubt, then that doubt is causing us unhappiness. That is afflictive. Afflictive means that it's causing us unhappiness. But the doubt free of that, when the doubt is used constructively, that's not afflictive.
So if we could use that, that's the best way to, it's the best tool.
That's why, now, really in respect to the question that you posed before, someone who has attained a certain level in his or her practice can engage in, let's say, anger in a virtuous way, can use it purely, without any affliction. If I think that my getting angry at someone is good for that person to get him to do something, I'm wrong. And there will always be an element of sort of negative quality to that anger. For a truly enlightened being, that anger will have a purity. It won't affect him at all or her at all. But that's a very high level. And you were talking about, within the practice of Tantra, things like attachment, desire are meant to be used. That's, in order to be prepared to engage in that kind of a practice, you have to have no attachment. You have to have enormous compassion for all sentient beings, and out of that compassion, a determination to attain enlightenment. you have to have a realization of emptiness. You have to have no belief in or a sense of self. These are the prerequisites upon which you can engage in such practices. They're way beyond our. We can't relate to those attitudes if we're honest.
Right. It's above our pay grade.
So for His Holiness to bring all these, like to bring in support for us to understand these, like fearness, alertness, or angry, and all this. So it's for us to understand ourselves and then not to give, it's for us to have hope also for changes, I assume, right? So yeah, there's like a space for us to change when we see affliction in ourselves. They don't give up hope. You know, there's a.
Maybe. I think that he is trying to show us that these, trying to take apart an emotion such as anger or doubt or fear and help us analyze it and see those parts that may be beneficial, see those parts that we really have to work at. The more we take things apart and look at them, the more we actually develop a certain power or mastery over them. I think that he's helping us develop that mastery. So, how are we doing here? So, doubt. The same is true for shame. At the basic level, shame is an important social emotion which has a constructive function. Nevertheless, when shame becomes extreme, it can lead to low self-regard and negative self-indulgence, which are clearly not constructive. So what would be the constructive quality of shame?
You modify your behavior. Then it causes you to modify your behavior and not do a shameful thing again.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
So shame can really be a valuable tool if you engage in life without shame for those times when you do the wrong thing or when you hurt someone, then you will easily hurt someone. But if you are overwhelmed by shame, you're overwhelmed and you can't act. Same with respect to grief or sorrow. In some situations, this emotion is constructive and has a positive effect. But when it becomes something like a habit of mind, divorced from any realistic cause, it may be destructive. And when it manifests as self-absorbed grief when it manifests as self-absorbed grief or as depression. Competitiveness, too, can be destructive, as when our competitive urge motivates us to strive, can be constructive to achieve something better or higher. However, when competitiveness acquires an aspect of wanting to put others down or hold them back so we can out-achieve them, it then becomes destructive. Well, let's think of competitiveness in the positive. Well, and today's the 7th.
Before we, recognize those things, we have to recognize in here that I'm angry, I'm greedy, I'm sad. We have to recognize that in order to change it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't even recognize our emotions, our mind, how can we, analyze and how to break through all those destructive emotions, right?
I think that's why His Holiness is putting each one of these down for us to think about. for us to really face.
So come to the class is the right choice, the first choice.
Correct.
It is.
So before we sing happy birthday to Darren, we will read the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three True Rules. Who are there people we are meant to remember, Darren?
Yes.
Yes? Say it out loud.
Zoba Heron,
Sopa Aaron.
Clem Burke,
Who?
Clem Burke,
Clem Burke
and Jennifer Horn.
and Jennifer Horn. Okay? I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavad, Tathagata, Arhat, Samyak Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who walk with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of Nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He is crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate state of perfection. He dwells in the moving and sees all sentient beings. All these are perfect virtues of the greatness of Buddha Bhagavad. The Holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavad teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma which is taught by the Bhagavad is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the sign of the great Yama, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joined palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are filled with glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha the community. I I prostrate respectfully always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable, the Dharma's virtues are inconceivable, the Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the foolishness are inconceivable. May they be born and keep the order. Alright, we'll read the 8 verses for training the mind. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst the all, and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, engaging myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings, and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings, as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly, with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer the victory to them. When one whom I have benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness, directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all harm and suffering of mine others. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. Prayer for the swift return of Chenwa Rinpoche. Exalted wisdom of all victories gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of an unwearing suffering rose, Guru of Sankubon Vajachan. Please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great church doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast waves of aspirational prayers, Lord of speech for the victor of God's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. For holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in unsurpassed great awakening. Yet you have withdrawn the activities of the form body that serves as the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme number of beings to those though impossible for you to seek the existence end, to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the Son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return from the realm of Nirmanakaya, por favor, by which and drawn by 7 seas. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life and business, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme emanation, full holder of the sage's teachings, and wish-fulfilling jewel. Return as the glory of the Sankante. Magnificent truth of the 3 precious jewels, Mahakala, Karmayama, and Srimati Devi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors. May you spontaneously fulfill our wish, the swift blossoming of the reincarnation's fresh, moonlight face.